my own story, you know, I've been working in the area of weight loss over 10 years. And my background is I'm a chiropractor, but did additional training at in lifestyle medicine, down like Harvard Medical School and various places. So that's nutrition, exercise, stress, and sleep. Focus, you know, last 10 years being weight loss. But I ran into my own challenges, even though I'm an expert in the field. And this was, you know, I refer to it as the perfect storm, where, you know, combination of stress, along with menopausal changes, as well as I was working out a back injury, so I couldn't exercise. So it was sort of a variety of things. And end of the story was I was carrying an extra 25, 30 pounds. So being, you know, somebody who's an expert in the field, I thought, okay, I know what I need to do to lose weight, do the usual, you know, just clean up my act, get very specific around what I needed to do. But it wasn't working. And it was pretty shocking, actually. Tried everything, and it was not working. You know, doing the, you know, personal training, it was, you know, eating really well-balanced diet and trying different specialized diets. The bottom line was I was stuck. And I knew enough to know that something's not right. There's something that's not right here, like what is going on. And so naturopaths and did cleanses and detoxes and all that stuff. So I was at a conference, and it's about 5 years ago, and talking with a colleague who was talking about intermittent fasting and about how people don't eat for a period of time, and you know, the results he was getting with them, like unbelievable results. And at the time, I thought, this is crazy. This can't be healthy. You know, if people aren't eating for a long period of time, their metabolism is going to slow down. They're going to lose muscle. I don't know how they can think straight, how they get through the day. And so to me, it just seemed like a very unhealthy way of living and an unhealthy way of losing weight. But in chatting with him more, I was curious though. So I actually did a lot of my own research and learned a lot more about it. And once I understood the science behind it, which I'll be talking a little bit about today, once I understood the science, I thought, okay, I get it. This is just different. And so then I utilized that for myself, and actually created a video blog, and it's on my website, of my own journey. And as a result of utilizing intermittent fasting with some more specific protocols, I lost like 20 pounds in 6 weeks. So it was incredible. And I kept it off because that was my other concern. You know, you don't want to just lose weight quickly and then have it bounce back. So that was certainly one of my concerns. So then after that, I just started using it, and I use it all the time now with people for weight loss purposes. And as Susie said, she went through the one slide for you about, you know, what it is, and it's, you know, not eating for a long enough period of time. It's a very old, actually practiced tradition, and in many cultures. But the thing is, you know, doing it properly. So in order for you to understand really how it's different, you know, and this is, Susie alluded to, like the hybrid car, and I love this example. And so what happens here is, you know, the hybrid car can use two sources of fuel, as gasoline or electricity. Well, as well, you know, the body has two sources of fuel, it says on the slide, glucose and fat. So typically in our day-to-day life, we are using glucose for fuel, which means, doesn't mean we're eating sugar, but just all the foods we eat are, you know, our proteins, our veg, and even, whether you're eating starches and things like that, eventually most of it gets broken down into glucose. And that's like the gasoline for the cells. Likewise, the other analogy I like to use is the bonfire, you know, like where you have, you know, the bonfire, when you're getting it going, you're using kindling. Well, that's like glucose, right? You got to keep feeding the fire or the fire goes out. It's just like when we're using glucose or food for fuel, well, we have to keep feeding it or the fire goes out. Is analogous to the metabolism slowing down. But you can also, once you get the fire going, if you can switch over to using coals for the bonfire, well then that's actually analogous to using fat for fuel. It's a long-lasting, slow-burning source of fuel. And you don't need to keep feeding the fire. So that's the basis of this. So now, I don't know, do I have control of the slide here, Susie?
No, there we go. So I've moved it, okay. And I will.
Yeah, maybe I'll just let you do it. That's where we kind of, something happened there where I couldn't get control of it. Okay, so how this works, how does intermittent fasting come into this is basically the body needs a long enough time with no food. If you look at the first point here, a long enough time with no food so that you use up the glucose in the blood within reason, the excess glucose, you use up the glycogen stores, that stored glucose, and now it needs fuel. So now the body is going to turn to, another source, and that's going to be fat. And now the body, when it breaks down fat, it actually creates what's called ketones. And ketones are actually now basically replacing glucose, and that's the source of fuel for the cell. And this is why the term, when you use intermittent fasting, what you're looking for is to get the body into ketosis. So in essence, we're kind of biohacking the whole food system. You still need food at certain points in time, obviously, for the nutritional benefits, but the purposes of fasting, during the fasting period, you don't have food, the body will be stimulated, it's going to go into fat burn, and we'll start burning fat. And this, you might think, well, why would somebody want to do this? Like, what is the point? Well, it actually has a strong evolutionary purpose, and that is that, we are as a species, we're hunter and gatherers. So quite conceivably, there would be periods of time where there's abundance, there's lots available, or a good hunting experience, or whatever, lots of food available, and then periods of time where there wouldn't be. So our body is not just going to shut down and die in the short term. It's actually just going to switch fuel sources so we can get through that time period and still have the energy to go out and continue to hunt and gather. It's really, if you think about it, it's just in relatively recent times, as in the last 100 years or 80 years, in terms of, if you look at the history of mankind, that we've had food available to us all the time. So we have this dormant system. It is a natural system. We're meant to tap into it. It's good for us, but we haven't had to use it. And it's not really until the last, 10, 15 years where more research has been done in this area that, hey, this is a great source of fuel, and we just have to learn how to tap into it properly. So as you can see at the last point, the idea is that from a weight loss perspective, certainly, and there's many other benefits which I'll be touching on in a few minutes, but from a weight loss perspective, your body is starting to use your body fat for fuel. Well, then that's an excellent way to burn a lot more fat than you ever could in using more traditional approaches for fuel. But having said that, there's people that do intermittent fasting not with a goal of losing weight because of all the other benefits, and it is still healthy for them. Often they might skew their diet a little more towards higher fat, but we'll get into that in a few more minutes. So certainly as a technique to losing weight, this is why it's so effective and people get great results. Okay, if you can flip the slide, please. So what I want to talk about right now is are the benefits to intermittent fasting. So obviously the first one, and I'll focus a little bit initially more on the effects on weight and metabolism, because I know this is often a big area of interest, but I'm going to move on as well to other health benefits. So, as I've already said, the body is now going to use fat for fuel. So the result, when somebody's doing fasting, their body's in ketosis, it can burn a lot more fat. In fact, it can burn between 2 and 6 pounds in a week, which sounds like a lot, but remember we're bypassing the food system, and it needs fuel, so it's just going to break it down. As compared to more traditional weight loss. So traditional weight loss is the idea you have breakfast, you have to eat every 3 to 4 hours, you create a bit of a caloric deficit, so that difference of whatever 400, 500 calories in a day will then be used to burn some fat. And when you're using traditional weight loss, it's slow and steady wins the race, right? You're going to burn about a pound a week. That's healthy weight loss when you're using glucose for fuel. Because if you do too much, that's when the metabolism slows down, you go into starvation mode, and you lose muscle. And then the weight loss slows down, but also a higher chance that they will put weight on more quickly after they stop their losing phase. Whereas with fat, you can burn a lot more because you're not looking to, you're not supplying the food. Food is not supplying the body with fuel. Now the fat is supplying it. So that's why you can lose a lot more weight. And in particular, it's interesting with fasting, it actually will target the belly area. That was my experience. And a lot of the women I deal with, they'll say, well, I've tried to lose weight and I can lose some, but I can never get rid of this belly. And it really has to do with the biochemistry and the signaling that happens from the brain to the brain when you're fasting, and the effect on hormones. So actually will target the belly fat, which is the hardest fat for the body to break down. It will hang on to that unless it's given the right signals. So I find it's particularly, as women are aging, as in, over 40-ish, the usual approaches for weight loss, and certainly a lot of people I see, I mean, they're over 40, they have more than 15 pounds to lose, and they can't, they're stuck. And it's really has to do with their metabolism. It has to do with the signals to activate healthy weight loss when you're using glucose is no longer working. It's kind of like a computer. If the hard drive isn't working properly, it's like the operating system, and you're trying different software applications, kind of like what we had earlier today. But anyways, I love that analogy because I hate computers. But anyways, but when you're trying different software applications, it's not the magic software application is going to work. It's actually the operating system. So often with women, as they getting older and hormonal changes and a variety of things that happen, that's why often the usual approaches for weight loss don't work. And they need something different. And that's where intermittent fasting activates this operating system. It's like a reboot to your hard drive. So if you can move to the next one, please. So as I said, I mean, the other benefit of intermittent fasting, it actually stimulates your metabolism, maintains muscle mass. So the correlation here is that from a weight loss perspective is, the big fear, you lose weight too quickly, metabolism slows down, you lose muscle. It's not good for the body, which is obviously true. But with fasting, it's a bit of a myth buster, is that when the body's using ketones for fuel, it's in ketosis. It will actually preserve muscle, and it actually keeps the metabolism working at a high level. It does not drop down. And this is, again, people think, oh, because I'm not eating for a longer stretch, of course the metabolism is going to slow down and they're going to lose muscle. I mean, that's what I first thought when I heard about it. But it's a different physiology when your body gets into ketosis and actually preserves it. And I have a graph afterwards that will show this as well. So, this ends up meaning that you have lots of energy. A lot of people think they're going to be very tired when they're fasting, but the opposite happens. And this means that is why you're going to be able to keep weight off. It's for weight loss purposes. But as well, from a body composition standpoint, when people are fasting, it stimulates growth hormone. And growth hormone is what we use to build muscle. Again, as we age, just naturally, the body is going to lose muscle. So certainly, anything we can do to help maintain and maintain our muscle mass is very helpful. So from a hormonal standpoint, fasting stimulates growth hormone, which is going to slow down loss, but then as well, if you're exercising during resistance training, it helps to build it up. So it's a big contributor to healthy aging for that reason. So with this, again, as it relates to weight loss, certainly losing more fat, maintaining your metabolism, maintaining your muscle mass means you can lose weight, lose a lot of weight, but at the same time, not have a rebound weight gain when you kind of reach your goal and you go back to regular eating. So this next slide will show the graph. I won't get into too much detail here, but just to give you an idea, the lines here are showing basically where the body is as oxidizing or it's breaking down various resources, how it's using materials for nutrients for fuel. And you have the carbohydrates. So when somebody starts fasting, that's the red line. Obviously, that goes down because they're no longer supplying the body with glucose, so it's not available for the body to burn. So then the body's going to kick into the green line, which is now you're seeing that starting to increase. It's going to burn it's utilizing fat and ketones, which produces ketones for fuel. But the interesting thing here is the blue line, which has to do with protein. Is it going to break down muscle, which is the same as breaking down protein? And you can see that initially there can be a bit of a dip, but that's just as the body is shifting from using glucose to fuel to fat. It will break it down. It'll initially there might be a bit of a disruptive, but then as it becomes what's called fat adaptive, then it will actually maintain the protein. It's no longer burning protein. Whereas somebody, if they're losing weight too quickly using glucose, or people under stress, things like that, that's when you see the protein dropping, which means they're losing muscle, which means metabolism slowing down, which is not healthy. So that's sort of a quick graph, and I do track this in my practice. I do a form of body composition testing, so I can see with people. So it's not just theoretical, this stuff I'm talking about. I mean, I will see week to week if somebody loses, let's say it's 4 pounds in a week, I can say, okay, so much was fat. What happened with water? You're maintaining your muscle, metabolism staying steady, which is quite something, you know. So it does, again, it is a bit of a myth buster. So now moving on to the other benefits that don't directly relate to weight loss. Certainly there's an increase in energy level. So when your cells are burning ketones, they produce ATP. Same thing happens when your body's using glucose. So if ketones or glucose, it's broken down. The actual energetic component that the cell uses is called ATP. Well, when you're burning your cells using ketones, it produces more ATP. So what that means in terms of how you experience it means you have more energy. Your cells are working at a higher level, they're more efficient. What does that feel like? That feels like more energy. And certainly, you know, I felt it when I started doing intermittent fasting, and a lot of my clients are shocked at how much energy they have. And particularly because their expectation is, oh, you know, if I'm not eating for a long enough period of time, aren't I going to get really tired? Especially if they've been using food to energize themselves. And let's face it, usually that's going to be, you know, coffees or sugar or simple carbs, those types of things. So when they find that they have lots of energy, guess what? It makes it a lot easier not to look for those foods that people think of as having, you know, they have cravings for, that are maybe somewhat unmanageable. So the result is people have a lot more energy. And this has an evolutionary component to it, again, going back to hunter and gatherer, because if you have, you know, if you think about it, if you have a period of time where food has not been available and your survival, you know, is literally you have to get up out of your cave and go hunt and gather food. Well, you can't afford to become more sloth-like and just think, oh, I'm just kind of tired, I'm not going to do that today. Because obviously, from a hunter-gatherer perspective, that's, you know, a recipe for death. So from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense that if there's a period of time with no food and your body goes into ketosis, it's actually going to stimulate you so you can get out and you have the energy to go hunt and gather. So another one of the benefits, and this is getting into some of the, if you move to the next slide, please, the aging components. I've already mentioned about maintaining muscle is an important part of aging, but you know, the basis of aging really is that we start to get more and more damaged cells building up in our body and less of new healthy cells being developed. I mean, that is aging. And so from an aging standpoint, what happens when the body's using ketones for energy? So first of all, that means insulin. So when you don't eat for a long enough period of time, the hormone insulin has to drop down quite low. That's the signal to the brain to upregulate the fat burning system. So when insulin is low, then the body can actually go into cleanup mode at a cellular level, because as cells age, they get more damaged. And so ideally what we want is the body getting rid of those. That's what autophagy is. It's the body basically eating its own damaged cells. And we want that to happen. And as I describe it with my clients, it's time for a spring cleanup. So first of all, then you're getting rid of damaged cells. So from an aging standpoint, that's very good. But also, this is an interesting area of a lot of research now, is that getting rid of these damaged cells means you're reducing your risk for cancer, because cancer basically is damaged cells that start replicating. You don't want that to happen. In fact, they're actually now starting to look at using fasting as part of treatment protocols for people with cancer. Like they want them coming in for their chemotherapy, well, they do fasting before. And one of the reasons for this is that cancer cells cannot use ketones for fuel. They can only use glucose. In fact, they have a much higher uptake of glucose for fuel. So if you switch your body into ketosis, basically you're starving cancer cells. So that sounds like a good idea. So this is a newer area in terms of cancer treatments, but they're starting to look at this more and more. Actually, I was just recently asked, and we just did some filming to be in a documentary that is it's called Hunger for Hope. And it's about a man that had a young guy, actually in his late 20s, had a brain tumor. And he actually, through more intensive fasting and meditation, managed to get rid of it. So anyway, so they were asking for kind of people that have considered knowledgeable in intermittent fasting and interviewing them. So it's an interesting kind of experience to go through that, but shows you the power of fasting. Now, the other side of this, getting rid of damaged cells is one part of the story in terms of healthy aging. But the other part is, and this is the third point, about stimulating the production of stem cells. So stem cells are kind of the cells that then allow for new healthy cells to develop. So between getting rid of damaged cells and then stimulating new healthy cells to develop, that is the essence of slowing down aging and healthy aging. So I will jokingly say to people, so, forget the Botox and plastic surgery and all that kind of stuff, just do some fasting. And, and I do hear a lot from a lot of my weight loss clients, people will say to them, what are you doing? Like, you look so good. And, they'll say, well, yeah, I've lost weight. And they're like, no, I can see that. But no, you look good. Like, your skin is glowing, your hair, like, just, you look 10 years younger. And, so this can be why people might use some intermittent fasting, just because it's so good for their cells, as opposed to just for weight loss. So one of the other areas in terms of benefits is the area of brain health. I find this actually one of the most interesting areas, because again, your brain, your cells can use ketones for fuel. A lot of people think, oh, they can only use glucose, but in fact, ketones are very effective in the brain. And when the brain shifts gears, and when the body shifts gears and is using ketones for fuel, in the brain, it actually stimulates what's called brain-derived neurotrophic protein.
Sorry, I'm going to be on the phone for a little bit.
Oh, sorry. That will stimulate brain-derived neurotrophic protein. And that is what helps the brain function at a much higher level, much more productive level. And so, actually, can we go on the next slide about the brain? Thank you. Yeah. So, in fact, they're actually now looking at using people in terms of treatments with certain types of dementia and for concussion. So getting their body to switch so that the brain is now using ketones for fuel is very healing for the brain. A lot of interesting research, again, around it's actually in the earlier stages being able to reverse dementia, which is quite something, and you wonder why dementia's been on a rise for so long. And in some places, they actually refer to Alzheimer's as type 3 diabetes. So there you have that connection between glucose and brain health. So switching to ketones is highly beneficial. But in terms of, what that feels like, and again, I experience this, and a lot of my clients find, because their expectation is, oh, when I'm fasting, aren't I going to become like just dippy, and I won't be able to focus, and my cognitive ability will be decreased. My memory is going to be lousy. Well, in fact, once your body has shifted into ketosis through fasting, people are shocked to find that does not happen. And if anything, or most people find, they're actually more productive. They find, wow, I'm sharper, I'm on the ball, my memory's good, my recall is much faster than it was before. So often they find it's the opposite effect, which than what they think will happen. So that definitely is a huge benefit to intermittent fasting. And then lastly, in terms of benefits, we have here is the idea of decreasing inflammation. I mean, inflammation in and of itself is a huge topic as it relates to health. But just, so you can appreciate that, just giving your digestive system a break from eating food, and particularly how we've been a lot of us have been eating over the years, that, you should eat every 3 hours, never let yourself, get too hungry, and grazing. So it means we're always eating. Digestive system, even if it's healthy food, still you're always eating. Your digestive system is always working. Well, simply just giving it a break from working is very healing to the digestive system. And digestive system is a very strong correlation to it and inflammation. I'm not going to get into all that right now because it's quite complex, but just enough to say that it does have an impact. And when digestion is off, it increases inflammation, and so increased inflammation has a lot of health implications. Certainly, it contributes to weight gain. Contributes to things like more aches and pains, skin issues. Those are all inflammatory type symptoms. So by giving the digestive system a break, a lot of that can clear up. And certainly I see that with people. Actually, often within the first week of working with me, a lot of those inflammatory stuff, those things disappear. So that's a lot of in terms of the benefits, that's a good sort of overview of them all, and hopefully explain kind of why and why there is this connection between intermittent fasting and the benefits. So now we'll get into, for the last bit here, a bit of the how-to. And now hopefully you're all excited and want to learn how to do this and how to do it properly.
It's Susie here. I wanted to let you know that it's great to hear you present this, because it really solidifies, that it is backed in research, and it's not just about weight loss. We've had a couple comments about people chatting, saying that they're looking forward to getting rid of the brain fog. So there's much more, and it sounds like an amazing technique. So I thank you. And shall we move on to the next piece there on the how-tos, which I'm sure everybody is quite keen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so got the slide up there. Good. So as I said, lots of benefits. Certainly for weight loss, it's phenomenal, but then there's all these other benefits as well when done properly. So how do you do it? So as I've already, insinuated here, the body needs a long enough period of time with no food. So the signal goes to the brain. It's used up all the glucose reserves and everything. Brain says, right, we need fuel. Let's change gears. So then it was going to stimulate the enzymes start breaking down fat. In order for that to happen, you need a minimum of 16 hours with no food. And I'll explain how you do it. It's actually not that hard. A lot of people, initially it sounds like, oh my goodness, but you can do it overnight, and we'll get into that in the next slide in terms of the timing, but that's what you're looking at. And in order for to switch over, basically, as I said before, you need to kind of have insulin has to drop down, and then the fat burning system is going to be ignited. This is like, getting the coals going. You got to get the coals lit, and once the coals are lit, then you're in fat burn. And this is, this is often termed, being fat adaptive. And it takes time to become fat adaptive. It varies with each person. It doesn't happen overnight. So it's not like, oh, you do it one day and then, oh, there we go, I've activated my fat burning system. It can take a few times, which, again, people are different. Their level of has really to do with genetics, but, whether they can do it within that week, within a couple of weeks, and it also depends on the method you use and the intensity of the fasting. So, you just need to bear that in mind. So if you try it and you're like, okay, I thought she said I was going to feel fantastic and be able to think straight and I'd have lots of energy. In the meantime, the first day you do it, you're like, I just want to lie in bed. Well, it does get better. You need to be, just like when you're training for a sport or doing anything like that, you're not going to suddenly be able to run the marathon after you've tried running for the first time. Your body needs to get more efficient at burning fat. And that's one of the things in the protocols that I use in my program. I call it the fast lane 4-phase system, because there's kind of 4 phases to it. But the whole idea is to really ramp it up and get you into ketosis and fat burn more quickly, so that you don't have that lulled period of time where you're not feeling so good and thinking, maybe this isn't such a good idea after all. So, but there's different ways to do it so you can get into fat burn more quickly. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this is, different breakdowns. So you think of intermittent fasting as in the very first slide we talked about. There's a feeding period and a fasting period. And this is how it's split up here. So it's 16 and 8. That means basically 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours, you consume your food within an 8-hour period. So how that typically people would do that is no breakfast. So if you finished eating dinner, let's say, and you're done and everything by 8 at night, you wouldn't eat until 12 the next day. That's 16 hours. And yes, you heard me correctly. I said no breakfast. We are so ingrained with the idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. This is probably the hardest thing for me to wrap my head around, because even after reading it, I still couldn't believe it. Because it's like, I don't know, I mean, it's like, milk and babies go together, right? So and then now we find more and more about, well, maybe it's not the best thing for babies. It's so ingrained. And again, if you're doing more traditional approaches for weight loss, or you're using the glucose system, yeah, you do need to keep feeding the fire. So breakfast is probably a good idea. But if you want to get your body to ketosis, it is not necessary. And the word breakfast, really, it just means when you break your fast. I mean, whoever said it really had to be first thing in the morning. You just want to make sure that first meal is actually a very healthy meal, because that's what sets the tone and the metabolism for the day. So the other method is to do 20 hours of fasting and 4 hours of eating. So with that, you would eat. That means basically you would probably, most people that do that, again, it's obviously easier to fast overnight, and they would start eating in the latter part of the afternoon. So they might eat between 3 and 7, 4 and 8, that type of thing. And so when you're eating in that time period, or just like the 8 hours, it's your choice. You could eat 2 meals. So 8 hours, you just do a lunch and dinner. You get a lunch, snack, dinner. For the 4-hour one, could be 2 small meals. Or one, just eat once in that time period. And then you have the 24-hour fast. So literally, most people that do that typically would do dinner to dinner. So you have dinner one night, and then you just don't eat for the entire day the next day. And then you would eat dinner the next night, so roughly 24 hours later. And we will talk about the importance of drinking water and staying hydrated. It is very important. I know for religious purposes, there's some forms of fasting they don't drink water, but from a health perspective, if you're doing this for health reasons, you do need to keep your body hydrated. Also, it's a great way, especially when you're first doing fasting, when you find, I'm kind of hungry, because you will feel hungry the first couple of days, first few days that you try it. Having, water, broth, healthy, herbal teas, things like that, it takes the edge off. Now, the other one I have listed here is called the 5 and 2 fast. And this is more about days, not hours. It doesn't mean it's the other way around. It's not, you're not fasting for 5 days. You're going to fast for 2 days. So basically 5 days you would eat just regularly. Even if you want to do breakfast, it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, however you typically eat. And then 2 days, those would be your fasting days. Now, what you do here, again, you could eat twice a day. It can be breakfast and dinner or lunch and dinner. A lot of people typically do lunch and dinner, but it's about the caloric amount. So on those 2 days, you shrink your calories down quite dramatically. And usually the goal is about 500 to 600 calories per day. Nice thing with this, you don't have to do them back to back. So you could say, I'm going to fast Monday and Thursday this week, because those are good days. I have busy work to do, don't have any social occasions, and you just shrink it right down. But that's a very strong signal to the brain. That 500-600 calorie mark is a strong signal to the brain to go into the fasting mode. And then in my program, it's a 4-phase system, so it's a bit different. It's using a combination of all of these, but it starts with loading. That's like kindling, and we're going to upregulate the fat-burning system. That's a couple of days. Then we do the losing phase. So in the losing phase, it's more intensive fasting. But because of the timing and the intensity, you do eat food, because the body, it's a good idea from a nutrient standpoint, but we're kind of bypassing the food system other than for the nutrient value. But in the losing phase, they're only eating twice a day, but we also shrink the amount of food. And I'm monitoring people closely to make sure we're targeting the right tissues, and it's healthy the whole way along. And then the next phase is locking in. And that's where we go back to the dual system. So we're not meant to stay in ketosis like forever. Again, it's a dual system. So, you know, locking in is how we go back to using the glucose system, or people may continue to do some form of intermittent fasting, but much more modified for the health benefits. Just want to lock in, make sure the new body set point locks in so you can keep the weight off.
Dr. Bovay, sorry, just a question on my own. What would, when you said the locking in, when you said for longer term, if people want to use intermittent fasting for longer term, what would they practice, you know, if they were going to do it for the rest of their lives? Is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, honestly, the biggest one, the most popular, and I mean, I do this, quite frankly, is I don't bother having breakfast anymore. They don't. So you're always getting a very mild fast, right? I mean, that's 16 hours. And honestly, people love it. It's simple. I mean, that's one of the things that people find, well, particularly if somebody's been struggling with losing weight, and it's the planning and the prepping and the shopping, or even just trying to eat healthy, and it's overwhelming. Nutrition's become overwhelming these days. And this is one of the things I love about fasting. You're kind of bypassing all that. I mean, we'll get into like what you do eat. You still need to eat well, you know, because there's value in nutrition. But, you know, the ability to kind of just, you know, not have breakfast and to have just, you're only worrying about eating twice a day. For busy people, a lot of my clients are very busy, but no matter what you choose here, it simplifies life. It's so easy to do from that standpoint. So it's amazing. So a lot of the typical questions, we can scoot ahead to the more frequently asked ones, are things like, you know, what do I eat? We'll start with that one. So as I said, you know, there's no magic wand here. You still need to eat well. You know, nutrition, there's value in nutrition just from the nutrient standpoint. So fasting does not mean, oh, now I can binge on, you know, chocolate and sweets and carby type foods. Unfortunately, that is not the case. You still need to eat well because you want the good nutrients. But the beauty of fasting is if you are vegan, if you're vegetarian, if you prefer eating paleo, you know, no matter what it is, you can apply this fasting to any sort of healthy way of eating. You know, but fundamentally, the big thing, you want to avoid insulin spikes. That's hard on the body because you're going from keeping insulin low to suddenly spiking insulin. So that's, you know, your sugars, your simple carbohydrates. So it's just fundamentally just good nutrition. Now my program, it's tweaked a little bit differently, still based on food, still food based, but it's more specific around the do's and don'ts and what to eat. But, you know, that's what's nice about this is that it's kind of very simple to implement and to utilize with any healthy way of eating. And again, the big thing is the first meal whenever you choose to have it. So in essence, your breakfast when you're breaking your fast, make sure it's not something where you're spiking insulin. You keep it just, again, proteins, healthy fats, lots of veg, some fruit, you know, and sticking with that. Now, how much should you eat? Okay, so this is actually just eat a normal amount of food. You know, with you're doing this on your own, again, with my program, it's quite specific, but if you're doing it on your own, you don't need to overcompensate. So if you're didn't eat breakfast, it doesn't mean you have to have a huge lunch and a huge dinner to compensate. Or if you're eating once a day, you don't need to gorge yourself. You just eat a regular amount. Because even especially when people start, they might feel hungry or might tend to overdo it. Just eat a regular amount and you'll be fine. What happens over time, also you'll find that you're not as hungry because fasting actually suppresses the hunger hormone. So it becomes very easy to just eat a regular amount of food. And with fasting as well, it really helps to recalibrate one's sense of portions because it changes your perspective around how much you actually do need to eat. Now, drinking water is extremely important. And it's, we can move to the next, thank you. Because two reasons. One is, a lot of times people think they're hungry, they're actually dehydrated. Secondly, when your body's in ketosis, you will find you do need to use the washroom more frequently. Does act as a little bit of a diuretic, so you want to keep yourself well hydrated. And in my practice, in the body composition testing I do, and I measure water. I mean, it's fascinating to see when people, if they don't drink enough water, particularly in their ketosis, it just slows down fat burn. So if your goal is weight loss, it really helps with that. But just generally, you it's important to keep yourself well hydrated. A general rule of thumb is half your body weight measured in pounds. So let's say if somebody weighed 150 pounds, well then they would drink 75 ounces of water in a day. If you're exercising, you drink more. If it's really hot and you're sweating, you drink more. Be it water or herbal teas. Coffee does not count towards water, just to be clear. So lastly, then we have, will I feel hungry? What should you do about it? So the first few times you try fasting, probably you will feel hungry. Sometimes it's just a habit of eating. Your body also is not very fat adaptive yet. Your body's looking for fuel. It's not available, but it's not too efficient at breaking down fat. So you could feel hungry, but it does get better. It does get easier. So as you become more fat adaptive, there's less hunger. Fasting also suppresses ghrelin, the hormone that increases appetite. So that improves. So it makes it easier. Again, and I say it all the time with my clients, they think they're going to be starving. And again, with the method I use, within a day or two, they're like, this is so easy. And even dealing with men, have huge appetites and weigh over 300 pounds. They're shocked that they're not hungry, which of course makes it easier then, right? To kind of avoid the cravings, manage your food intake. And this is one of the beauties, I think, of fasting, is it does really recalibrate and change your relationship with food. Because when you have a period of time where you're fasting, so you don't want to eat, and you find your attention is going to food, usually it starts with, oh, I'm hungry. And then you think, am I physically hungry? No, I'm not. Why am I thinking about food? What am I using food for? I have one client, again, businesswoman, entrepreneur, worked from home, so the kitchen is like, 10 steps away. And she realized how often she was always thinking about food and going into the kitchen, because during fasting she couldn't. And she realized, you know what? I'm procrastinating on things I need to do for my business, because she doesn't have a boss overseeing her. I'm not willing to deal with uncomfortable stuff. I'm, relating to her business. Anyways, the bottom line was, it just forced her, and side benefit, she became very refocused and re-engaged with her business, because this distraction that food was providing, this comfort, was taken away. And it forced her to just get refocused. So I remember her best line, she said, I'm no longer hungry for food, I'm hungry for success. I always love that line. So, okay, and then the other question I get often is, can I exercise? So yes, you can. If you've already been exercising, you can continue. Obviously, the first few times you're doing fasting, if you're exercising on those days or in that fasting period, listen to your body. Again, you might be totally fine. You might find you're weaker, you get tired more quickly. Your body's not used to it yet. It will get better. Certainly, if you're feeling dizzy, lightheaded, anything like that, well, then you need to take it down a notch or two, or stop and either hydrate or your body might need fuel. You might have overdone it. Like, you can't just suddenly run the marathon, so to speak. So, but as your body gets more fat adaptive, you can completely exercise. I mean, some people that exercise at a very intense level, be it endurance or intensity of, the intensity of the actual exercise. If they want to do it in a fasting state, they can, but then what they might need to do is just fuel their body with, you can actually drink exogenous ketones. So you're providing fuel, so you're maintaining the fast, but you're supplying your body with fuel. Or actually have some fat, which sounds very weird, but they have this bulletproof coffee. You put like coconut oil or MCT oil in coffee, whip it up. So you're giving your body fuel, you're giving it fat, but you're not breaking the actual fast, because you're not getting any carbohydrates. So that's a way of getting around if you want to exercise intensely. It also depends on your goals. If the goal is weight loss versus you're not trying to lose weight, but your body needs fuel. Fasting using ketones is actually quite big in the sports field, but they're not using it for weight loss purposes. So they need to fuel their body, so their body has the fat to burn. So they will eat a higher fat diet and do fasting. So it's sort of a different approach, but still based on ketosis. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So I love this quote, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by change. So certainly intermittent fasting is sometimes that you need to make a change. I talked about how particularly potential with aging and excess body weight, if that's an issue, how it affects our metabolism, affects our operating system in our body. So intermittent fasting is a great way to shake things up, awaken that dormant system within your body that's very good for you. Get the dual fuel source happening. That's the change that makes, not just from a weight loss perspective, but from all the other benefits. I mean, that's a dramatic change for the body, and it is completely healthy. It is completely natural. We are meant to, at times, let our body go into ketosis. So it's an amazing way to lose the weight. You know, as I say, my practice, people lose a lot of weight, like 20 pounds, 6 weeks on average. So dramatic weight loss, targeting fat, but then you have all the other health benefits, be it because you're preventatively, like if you're concerned about brain health, you're concerned about things that run in the family, certainly it's sort of something to look at. If it's, you know, cancer runs in the family, there's benefits to it. Or if it actually, you want to use it more therapeutically, highly advantageous.
Dr. Bovay, I think we're almost ready for questions, but there was one that came in, was how about lemon in your water? Is that okay if you're hydrating but you have lemon in the water?
Yes. Yeah, it's actually very good for the body, especially in the morning. It's good for the liver. I didn't get into this, but the liver is a very critical part of this whole process. So liver health, because as you burn fat, you release toxins, and the liver has to detoxify. So lemon water in the morning is, in particular, is excellent.
Great. And I've been encouraging people to ask questions, but we're about to sign off. But this is a great time if you had any questions that you wanted to ask Dr. Bovay. I actually had one, I'm sorry, but when you said a regular amount, would that be, so if I was supposed to be eating 1,700 calories and I went on a 16-8 fast, then I would just have 2 meals that were about, 600 calories each? Is that important to look at that thing like that when you say a regular amount?
Yeah, like it's, it's not like, I mean, sometimes it's hard to fit in, all those calories, in that time period, unless you're doing it like daily.
Right.
But, you might want to spread it out more because it's a lot to eat. Like if you're at 1,700 calories, that's, over 800 calories per meal. That's a lot of food at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where people will move towards sometimes having fat, because fat's a way of getting more calories, but without a huge volume of food.
Yeah, bacon. Sorry. There was another question for you. It's one question. I'll read it for you. You mentioned that you won't gain the weight back after the fast. Does this mean that you can go back to eating normally and not expect to weight gain, or do you need to fast, have some kind of fast forever?
Well, it really depends on how long you're fasting for and how you're doing that. It's hard to answer that question like you're talking one day. It wouldn't make a difference. If you've been using intermittent fasting on an ongoing basis and you've dropped weight, then you can just go back to, if you want to start having breakfast again, you can do that, right? And you won't gain weight because your metabolism should be fine. So it really depends on the method that's being used. Like, so for instance, in my program, the fasting period, the losing phase is more intensive. Now, so it's a bit of a process to get to the point where they can go, if they choose to go back to having, 3 meals a day. It's kind of a 2-step process. I don't mean the locking in. We don't suddenly go back to having all sorts of carbs and a huge amount of food, because the signal to the brain is getting a mixed message. So in the locking in, it's okay, we've got to kind of increase the amount of food, and then we also have to sort of start increasing the variety of foods. Maybe if we're going to reintroduce kind of the higher carbohydrate type foods, but we do it gradually. So at the end of that 4-week period, the new body set point's locked in. Now it's a stable weight loss. The metabolism was always stable. It's just how we start reintroducing things.
Great. I think that answered it. Yeah. There's no more questions right now, but I am going to go to the next slide because I think this might be of interest to the folks that we have on the line.
Yeah.
So if you can just describe the offer, and I just want to let people know that I will be sending out an email with these links to everybody that registered. But I'll let Dr. Sher describe the offering for Avanti Women.
Yes, there's a few things on this slide, and you'll get my contact information. There's obviously my website. If you go to the website, that's where there is the pop-up right at the beginning, and you can then from there it's the Ultimate Guide to Intermittent Fasting, an ebook that summarizes some of what I've said in more detail. So So you can help yourself to that. In terms of the actual offer, I do offer it's a 30-minute complimentary phone consultation. So again, you go to my website and there's the link. And with that, you can book a time to speak with me. Because, if you find that, what you've heard, you think, yes, I'm very interested, still not sure if it's right for me, it gives me a chance. It's just a conversation with me. It's a chance for me to learn more about what you're looking for, your goals, what your challenges have been, particularly if it's focused on weight loss. And then I'm able to kind of give you an idea if I think this approach is right for you. But as well, I can talk to you more about the program, how it works, and that type of stuff. So then we can see if it's, a good fit or not. And lastly, I didn't put it up here, but I do have a Facebook page, which is just my name, Dr. Sher Bovay. And certainly on there, we're always putting up, interesting information, and you can follow that and pick up tidbits along the way. It's a way to kind of keep in touch with what's happening. And the other thing is, on my website, I actually do have my video blogs. I mentioned about my 6-week process, which was about 4 or 5 years ago. My journey when I first did this whole intermittent fasting and using the protocols that I use now. So if it's slow night on Netflix, you can watch my video blog.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very interested in this, and as I say, everyone that I have been working with Dr. Sher's and seeing some of the materials, but it was absolutely great to have you describe things, and I'm sure it was wonderful for everyone, and I'll get that email out to everybody with these offers, and also we'll post this video on YouTube. So thank you very much, and I'm going to close this recording off for now. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.